Alright, let's talk about drifting. That glorious tire-smoking art of getting a car completely out of shape, yet somehow, miraculously, keeping it all under control. It's a ballet of oversteer, a symphony of screaming engines and tortured rubber. For many, it's the ultimate expression of car control, a visceral thrill that hooks you deep from the very first time you feel that rear end step out. It's more than just showing off, it's about a profound connection between driver, machine, and the very limits of adhesion. It's noisy, it's often expensive, and it requires a shed-load of skill. But oh boy, when you get it right, there's simply nothing else quite like it in the world of four-wheeled fun. The appeal is undeniable, isn't it? You see those videos online, cars pirouetting with impossible grace, smoke billowing like a fighter jet on afterburners. Part of it is the spectacle, the sheer visual drama of a car defying what seems like the normal laws of physics. But for those of us who truly love driving, the real magic lies in the challenge. It's about mastering a complex set of inputs, feeling the car communicate through the seat of your pants, and making those tiny, instinctive corrections that keep the whole show on the road, or rather, sideways on the track. This isn't about just stomping on the loud pedal, it's a delicate dance that demands respect for the machine and its capabilities. This guide, then, is for you, the aspiring drift hero. Perhaps you've got a rear-wheel drive car sitting on your drive and you've always wondered what it would take to get its tail wagging in a controlled, deliberate manner. We're going to break it down step by step from the absolute basics to the finer points of linking slides. But before we even think about touching a steering wheel in anger, we need to have a serious chat. A very serious chat, in fact, because while drifting is magnificent fun, it can also go very wrong very quickly if you don't approach it with the right mindset and, crucially, in the right place. So buckle up, open your mind, and prepare to learn. We're not just going to talk about yanking the handbrake and hoping for the best, that's for the amateurs. We're going to delve into the proper techniques, the feelings, the nuances that separate a messy spin from a beautiful, controlled drift. It's a journey that requires patience, dedication, and a healthy respect for what you're trying to achieve. If you're ready to put in the effort, the rewards are immense. Let's get started on your path to mastering the art of going sideways, deliberately and skillfully. Right, before your imagination runs wild with visions of Ken Block-esque antics, we need to lay down the law. And this law is non-negotiable, utterly paramount, the alpha and omega of learning to drift safety first, always. I cannot stress this enough. If you take only one thing away from this entire guide, let it be this. Messing this bit up doesn't just mean a bruised ego or a bent bit of metal, it can mean serious injury or worse, for you or for someone else entirely innocent. So listen up, because this is the most important section by a country mile. Forget everything else if you ignore this. Public roads are absolutely, categorically, 100% off limits for practicing drifting. I don't care if it's 3 in the morning on a deserted industrial estate. I don't care if you think you know the road like the back of your hand. Just don't do it. Ever. The risks are far too high. You've got unpredictable surfaces, hidden obstacles, curbs designed to wreck your suspension, and most importantly, other road users who aren't expecting a car to suddenly appear sideways around a blind bend. It's irresponsible, it's illegal, and frankly, it's just plain stupid. You'll end up as a statistic, or worse, making someone else one. So where can you unleash your inner drift king safely? You need a controlled environment. Think large, empty tarmac spaces. Disused airfields are brilliant if you can get access. Dedicated race circuits often have drift days or specific areas for practice. Even a large, empty car park with express permission from the owner can work if it's genuinely deserted and away from any potential hazards. The key is space, lots of it, so you have ample room for error, and you will make errors, especially when you're starting out. That's part of the learning process, but those errors need to happen where the only consequence is a bit of embarrassment, not a major incident. Once you've found your safe haven, it's time to set up your practice area. Cones are your best friends here. They're cheap, they're visible, and they don't damage your car if you nudge them. Use them to mark out a simple corner, a series of turns, or even just a large circle to begin with. This gives you something to aim for, a reference point for initiating your drift and controlling your line. It transforms a daunting expanse of empty tarmac into a defined learning space. Remember, the goal is to learn control, and cones help you measure and refine that control systematically. Now let's talk about the machine you'll likely be using. Most of us don't have a purpose-built, stripped-out drift monster with 1,000 horsepower and a hydraulic handbrake sitting in the garage. You'll probably be starting with your everyday road car, perhaps a slightly older, rear-wheel drive saloon or coupe. And let me tell you, drifting a standard road car is a significantly tougher challenge than it is in a competition spec machine. Those cars are designed from the ground up to go sideways effortlessly. Yours most likely is not. It's designed for comfort, stability, and getting you to the shops. The biggest hurdle with a typical road car is often a lack of outright power, especially low-down torque. Purpose-built drift cars often have highly tuned engines, sometimes with massive turbochargers, that deliver instant tire-shredding grunt the moment you breathe on the throttle. Your average family saloon? Not so much. This means you can't just rely on a boot full of power to break traction and hold a slide. You'll need to be much more aggressive and precise with your other inputs, your steering, your braking, and how you use the car's weight. It demands a more nuanced approach. Handling features, or rather the lack of them tailored for drifting, also play a big part. Road cars are generally set up for understeer, meaning the front tires lose grip before the rears. This is a safety feature for normal driving, but it's the opposite of what you want for drifting. You might have soft suspension, standard road tires with lots of grip, and an open differential that sends power to the wheel with the least traction, usually the inside, unloaded one during a drift, which isn't ideal. Things like limited slip differentials, stiffer suspension, and more aggressive steering geometry found on drift cars make a world of difference. Therefore, to get a standard road car to drift and hold it, you need to be quite forceful and deliberate. You can't be timid. This means using more aggressive throttle applications to overcome the engine's modest output and the tire's grip. It means sharper, more decisive steering inputs to flick the car into a slide and to catch it. You'll be working harder, using techniques like the clutch kick or a Scandinavian flick more often to initiate the drift, simply because the car needs more persuasion to break its inherent stability. It's a challenge, but mastering it in a road car makes you a better, more adaptable driver. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of yanking steering wheels and mashing throttles, we need to understand a fundamental concept: weight transfer. This is the secret sauce, the invisible hand that dictates how your car behaves on the limit. Get your head around weight transfer, and you're halfway to understanding how to drift. It's all about moving the car's mass around, loading and unloading different tires to alter their grip levels. Think of your car as having a certain amount of grip available at each corner. Weight transfer is how you manipulate that distribution to your advantage. It's physics, pure and simple, but it's the physics of fun. When you accelerate, weight shifts to the rear of the car, planting the rear tires and giving them more grip, while lightening the front. When you brake, the opposite happens. Weight shifts forward, loading up the front tires, increasing their grip, and crucially making the rear of the car lighter and more inclined to lose traction. Similarly, when you turn the steering wheel, weight transfers to the outside tires. This dynamic shifting of mass is happening constantly while you drive, but in drifting, you exaggerate these movements to deliberately upset the car's balance and initiate a slide. It's a core skill you must internalize. Mastering weight transfer is absolutely key to initiating a drift smoothly and effectively, especially in a lower-powered road car. A sudden sharp lift off the throttle mid-corner can shift weight forward, lightening the rear, and help it step out. A dab of the brakes as you turn in trail braking does the same thing but more aggressively. This is far more elegant and controllable than just yanking the handbrake, which is a blunt instrument by comparison. Understanding how to use the pedals to shift weight is a cornerstone of advanced car control, not just for drifting but for fast road and track driving too. So, as you approach a corner with the intention of drifting, you're not just thinking about your line or your speed, you're thinking about how to manipulate the car's weight. How can you use the brakes to load up the front tires just enough? How can you time your steering input to coincide with that weight shift to encourage the rear to rotate? It's a constant dialogue with the car, feeling what it's doing and making inputs to guide its mass. Be prepared to fine-tune these inputs constantly. It's a delicate balance, a dance on the edge of grip, orchestrated by your understanding of these fundamental forces. Section 5, Step 1, the initiation, kicking the tail out. Right, theory time is over. Let's get practical. The first major step is initiating the drift. This is where you deliberately break rear traction and get the car pointing in a direction that isn't straight ahead. There are several ways to do this, but we'll focus on a common technique involving weight transfer and steering input, especially suited for cars that need a bit of encouragement. You'll approach your chosen corner, marked out by those friendly cones we talked about earlier, with a decent amount of speed. Not crazy, flat-out speed, but enough momentum to carry the slide. Too slow, and it'll just bog down. Too fast, and you'll be visiting the scenery. As you get near your turn-in point, you need to shift the car's weight forward to lighten the rear tires. The classic way to do this is with a sharp but controlled application of the brakes. This isn't an emergency stop. It's a purposeful prod to compress the front suspension and pivot the car's mass over the front axle. At almost the same moment, or just fractionally after you start braking, you'll make a decisive steering input, a flick, into the corner. This combination of braking and turning unsettles the rear of the car, making it want to step out of line. It's a coordinated move, not two separate actions. The amount of brake and the aggression of the steering flick will depend massively on your car, your speed, and the surface conditions. This is where practice and feel come in. Too much brake, and you'll just understeer or stop. Too little, and nothing much will happen. Too much steering and you might spin, too little, and the rear won't come around enough. You're looking for that sweet spot where the rear tires lose just enough adhesion to start a progressive slide. Be prepared to experiment and make many mistakes. This is perfectly normal. Nobody nails this on their first, second, or even 10th try. Once the rear starts to move, you need to be ready to react instantly. This is where many beginners falter. They initiate the slide and then there's a pause, a moment of surprise before they try to correct. By then it's often too late and you're either spinning or you've killed the drift. You need to be anticipating the slide and be ready with countersteer and throttle adjustments almost before it happens. Mastering this initial phase, getting the car consistently unsettled and starting to rotate, is the first big hurdle. Keep practicing that entry, focusing on smooth, deliberate weight transfer and that crucial initial steering input. Section 6, Step 2, Holding the Slide, the art of throttle and steer. So, you've successfully kicked the tail out, the car is at an angle, and for a glorious fleeting moment you're drifting. Congratulations. Now for the really tricky bit, maintaining that drift. This is where the real skill lies, the delicate balancing act of throttle and steering that keeps the car sideways, under control, and pointing roughly where you want it to go. It's a continuous dance, a conversation with the car where you're constantly making tiny adjustments. If initiating the drift is the flick of a switch, maintaining it is like fine-tuning a sensitive radio dial to keep the signal clear. Throttle control is absolutely paramount here. Once the car is sliding, the throttle isn't just for making noise and smoke. It's your primary tool for adjusting the angle of the drift. Generally, more throttle will increase the drift angle, make the car go more sideways, or push the car wider, while easing off the throttle will decrease the angle and tighten your line. You need to keep the engine revs relatively high in the meaty part of the power band, so you have instant response available. If the revs drop too low, the car can bog down, and you'll lose the slide, or worse, grip up suddenly and unexpectedly. Simultaneously, you'll be working the steering wheel. As the rear steps out, you'll need to apply countersteer steering in the opposite direction of the corner to stop the car from spinning. The amount of countersteer depends on the angle of the slide. More angle needs more countersteer. But it's not just a case of winding on lock and holding it there. You'll be constantly making small fluid adjustments to the steering to balance the car, working in harmony with your throttle inputs. It's about feeling what the car is doing through the steering and the seat and reacting intuitively. The goal is to find that equilibrium, that sweet spot where the car is beautifully balanced on the edge of grip, held there by a precise combination of power and steering. You're effectively using the throttle to steer the rear of the car and the steering wheel to guide the front. It sounds complicated, and frankly it is at first. You'll spin countless times, you'll understeer, you'll loop out or straighten up when you don't mean to. But with every attempt you'll learn a little more about how your car reacts, how much throttle it needs, how much steering input is just right. Keep those revs up, be smooth, and look where you want to go. Section 7, Step 3, the transition, dancing from lock to lock. Once you can initiate and hold a drift in a single direction, the next exciting challenge is transitioning the drift. This is when you change the car's direction of slide, for example, when navigating an S-bend or linking one drift into another in the opposite direction. This is where drifting starts to look really spectacular, that pendulum-like swing from one angle to another. It requires precise timing and a good understanding of You guessed it, weight transfer. Done right, it's incredibly satisfying and looks utterly brilliant. Done wrong, well, you'll be facing the wrong way pretty quickly. The key to a smooth transition is to use the momentum of the first drift to help initiate the second. As you approach the point where you want to change direction, you need to slightly over-rotate the car in the current direction of the drift. This might involve a little more throttle or a slight reduction in counter steer. Then, just as the car is starting to swing a bit too far, you lift off the accelerator sharply. This sudden liftoff shifts weight forward, lightens the rear, and causes the car to want to pendulum back the other way. It's like a flick, but using the car's own rotational energy. As the car begins to swing back, this is where things get really dynamic. You need to allow the steering wheel to spin relatively freely through your hands, letting the car's natural self-centering tendency, the caster effect, do some of the work. Don't fight it, guide it. You'll catch the wheel as the car reaches the desired angle for the new drift, applying countersteer in the new direction. Crucially, you need to get back on the throttle quickly, but smoothly, as soon as the car is pointing in the new direction of slide. This stabilizes the car and powers it into the next drift. Hesitation here is your enemy. Timing is everything in a transition. Lift off too early or too late and the transition will be awkward or might not happen at all. Get back on the power too soon or too aggressively and you might spin. Too late, and you'll lose the drift. It's a very fast-paced sequence of events, often over in a fraction of a second. Practice this by setting up two cones relatively close together, requiring a quick change of direction. Start slowly, focusing on the feeling of the weight shifting and the car rotating beneath you. It's one of the most rewarding techniques to master. Section 8. Step 4. The smooth return. Exiting the drift with poise. You've initiated, you've maintained, perhaps you've even transitioned. Now it's time to bring the car back in line and exit the drift smoothly. This might seem like the easy part, but a clumsy exit can undo all your good work, potentially unsettling the car or just looking messy. The aim is to seamlessly blend the slide back into straight-line driving or into a normal grip driving line through the rest of the corner, all while maintaining full control. It's the final flourish, the graceful dismount after your sideways performance. It requires anticipation and a gentle touch. As you decide to end the drift, the primary action is to accurately and smoothly release the steering angle, your countersteer. You don't just snap the wheel back to center. Instead, you gradually unwind the steering lock, allowing the rear tires to regain traction progressively. As you reduce the countersteer, you'll also need to ease off the throttle. If you keep the power on hard while straightening the steering, you might just power over into a spin in the other direction, or experience a violent snap back as the tires suddenly grip. It's about coordinating the reduction of steering lock with the reduction of throttle. The car's momentum and the remaining slip angle will try to pull the car straight. Your job is to manage this process. As the rear tires start to bite and regain full traction, you'll feel the car wanting to straighten up. You need to be smooth in releasing the load you've built up in the suspension and tires. If the car feels like it's going to snap back too aggressively, a tiny bit of throttle can sometimes help to smooth out the transition from slide to grip. But this is a fine balance. Too much, and you'll prolong the slide or unsettle it again. Often, especially when you're learning, you might overcorrect or undercorrect on the exit. You might find the car wiggles a bit as it straightens out. This is normal. The key is to look well ahead, where you want the car to go, and make small, precise adjustments to guide it there. If the rear is still a little loose, be ready to catch any small secondary slides. With practice, you'll develop a feel for exactly when and how much to unwind the steering and modulate the throttle for a perfectly serene and controlled exit. It's the mark of a skilled drifter, not just getting it sideways but bringing it back with elegance. Section 9. Practice patience and tires becoming a drift artisan. So there you have it, the fundamental steps to initiating, maintaining, transitioning, and exiting a drift. It sounds like a lot to take in, and honestly it is. Mastering the art of drifting isn't something that happens overnight, or even over a weekend. It takes hours upon hours of dedicated practice, a huge amount of patience, and let's be frank, quite a few sets of tires. There are no shortcuts to becoming proficient. You simply have to put in the seat time and embrace the learning curve, which will undoubtedly be filled with spins, stalls, and moments of utter frustration. The most practical tip I can give you is to break down the process. Don't try to link a complex series of drifts on your first day. Start with the very basics. Spend an entire session just practicing drift initiation in a simple circle or around a single cone. Get comfortable with the feeling of the rear stepping out and catching it, then move on to holding a steady drift, then practice transitions. Focus on one element at a time until it starts to feel instinctive before you try to combine them. Repetition is your friend here, building that crucial muscle memory. Be prepared to make mistakes. Lots of them. Every spin, every time you understeer into the cones, every time you stall the engine is a learning opportunity. Don't get disheartened. Analyze what went wrong. Were you too aggressive on the throttle? Did you not use enough countersteer, or too much? Were you too early or too late with your inputs? Film yourself if you can. It's amazing what you can learn by watching your own attempts back. And remember those safety rules. Always practice in a safe, controlled environment so that your mistakes have minimal consequences. Finally, be kind to your car, especially if it's your daily driver. Drifting is hard on a vehicle. Tires will wear out quickly, clutches can take a beating, and suspension components will be stressed. Keep an eye on your car's fluids and general health, and be patient with yourself. Progress might feel slow at times, but stick with it. The thrill of executing your first perfect controlled drift, linking corners with smoke pouring from the rears, is an addictive and immensely rewarding experience. It's a true test of car control, and mastering it will make you a far better, more connected driver in every situation. Now, go find a safe space and start practicing.